This is a talk about exercise. As you go through life, you are on the upslope until you reach adulthood, but when you get to my age, you're on a downhill slope. You're all going to get here, so let me tell you about it. Exercise itself is by and large a fairly middle-class, recent fad. And you, in your youth and young adulthood, are on the left side of a performance curve. You're still getting better and better, aspiring to personal bests every time you go out. I, on the other hand, have to deal with personal worsts repeatedly because I'm on the downside, getting worse. What's it like? Let's look at the history of exercise. In the 1950s, when I was a kid, it was not a thing. We had physical exercise in gym class where we had, do this and that. But unless we were athletes on some team or another, we didn't really get terribly serious about it. And it wasn't a big thing. Generation prior to mine, my father's generation, they never thought about it. He worked with his hands. Now, I want to tell you, that was probably the best exercise there was. In the last week of his life, I held his hand. That was the hand of a man. He still had a strong grip from his youth. But I wasn't so lucky, and I didn't get in shape until I joined the Army at the age of 21, where they made me run 2 kilometers at 12 kilometers an hour, which was a big deal. Not a big deal to you marathoners, but you know it was a big deal to me. And then 4 years later, the book came out, Aerobics, written by a military doctor at the time of Vietnam who had to take what he called baby whales, people who were fat and out of shape as I had been, and turn them into soldiers. And he did it by having them do the big 3, run, swim, and cycle. Don't take much equipment, don't take a team or anything, and they just take time and endurance. And you have targets. He said, the thing we want to do is to get your body to take this much oxygen out of the air. And he said, how do we tell if it's doing that? Simple way is by your heartbeat. A person's maximum heart rate should be 220 minus your age. So the target workout rate, your sustained, should be 80% of that, which for a 20-year-old would be 160 beats per minute. For a guy my age, it's 110. But the resting heart rate for everybody is about the same, 60 beats per minute. I can measure mine by putting my finger on my temporal artery and bump, bump, bump. It's about 60. But my real measure when I'm working out, because I don't have any of these gadgets on me, is do I leave a good puddle of sweat under the exercise bike? Anyhow, my routine as I was younger was to run 4 miles a day, 6.5 kilometers. I bicycled to work and I started doing pull-ups to build my strength up. I started actually when I was 35 and I worked up to about 35 pull-ups. Can't do a 1 anymore. That's the downhill slope. And I had to stop running 40 years ago because my knees gave out. But all of us have a curve. We get better and better and better, and then we go down. And this is in terms of agility, stamina, and strength, in more or less that order, but everybody's different. You have to recognize that there is a downhill slope. So manage that slide. And an important thing, this is a little bit off target, every illness, every injury tends to reduce your maximum. You don't get quite back to where you used to be. So you have to really pay attention to sore throats, sore muscles, sore joints. and listen to your body. And it's always a trade-off, because you want to keep at it, because if you ever quit, you're not going to get back. But on the other hand, you don't want to make yourself sick, ruin your body to the point you can't come back. And my advice is listen to your body, and you will get a lot of advice from others that you want to hear but don't exactly follow. And that would be from your spouse, who will say, "Why don't you take it easy, dear? Sit down and take it easy." Because no, if sitting down taking it easy accelerates the path downhill. And the other one is your doctor, who will say, "You don't want to stress your body too much." But he doesn't live in your body. You need to listen to your own body. So listen to his advice, consider it, but make your own decisions. And be very careful with medicines and therapies coming from doctors. A guy my age in America typically takes at least 5 medications every day, maybe 10 or 15. That's not what you need. And doctors themselves have done a study. They went to an old folks' home, looked at all the medicines that everybody there was taking, and they said, let's cut it by 50%. So they took away half the medicines. They decided which ones were probably worthless, and measured, did the people's health really get worse when you took the medicines away? No, it improved, because you don't nearly need all that stuff. Doctors have an incentive to give you medicines. In the United States, they make money from giving you medicines. Here, the drug company salesmen encourage the doctors, take them out to lunch and so on, but it's not as bad as it is in the States. But the doctors don't ask about side effects or drug interactions. I personally experienced this. They gave me Cipro for some antibiotic thing, and they didn't tell me that it might result in a muscle tear in my calf. It did. I was out for a month this spring on account of that. So do your own research. Whenever a doctor gives you a prescription, look up the side effects on drugs.com and decide whether you need it or not, whether it's just to make you feel better or whether it really cure the problem. Drugs.com or apteka.ua. Now, every person is different also, and drugs are tested on so many people, but they don't know if it's going to be appropriate to you. So be careful with drugs. Switching back to exercise, exercise is good for you in another way. It keeps your brain sharp. Your brain uses about 20% of your energy, and if your circulation is not good enough to get the energy up to your brain, you get brain fog. And old people, you may notice, tend to lose their wits. They tend to not be quite so sharp anymore. And one reason is just because they're not getting energy to the brain. So exercise keeps your brain sharp. It also gives you a good attitude toward life. It gives you sunshine, vitamin D, all sorts of things. So exercise is important to keep up. I'll close by saying, use it or lose it. So you want to do as much as you can for as long as you can. Do the things you can do. As I say, running tends to bung up your knees, but swimming and cycling are pretty easy on your body. And walking, just walking a lot, they find helps profoundly. You will eventually lose in the end. We all wind up in that wooden box at some point. But make it as slow as possible, as graceful as possible, and as late as possible. Madam Toastmaster.